I would say you, Dan Slott, and Chip Zdarsky are the funniest writers, bar none. Like your jokes, your humor, your comedy, it endears the work to me. And when I'm laughing, I'm having fun and I'm like, oh, I love this. I'm having a great time. So I got to say, just the witticism of Bryan Q. Miller is fantastic. So on top of being a great writer, I really love your comedy, sir.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That's wonderful company to keep. Those guys are both awesome.
We are here today to talk about life, love, and the pursuit of happiness, but specifically Multiverses, which when I first saw you post that it was going to be you and Dan Mora, who is one of my favorite artists.
He's awesome.
I almost dropped my phone because I was like, how is this possible? The peanut butter and the chocolate going together? How could it be?
Well, and like he takes notes like a champ, like he's a total pro. Like it was totally, not that like there were many notes to give because this stuff's awesome, but like covers have to go through approval process. And it's like, oh, can this character be on it? Especially with something like Multiversus, where there's so many different, as I'm sure we'll talk about, different kinds of ways you can use different characters that outside of that video game.
Yes.
But it's like, oh, no Wile E. Coyote on this one? Okay. And then like 3 hours later, there would be, he might be tiny in the back, but he wasn't like up front anymore. He was great. Dan was fantastic.
Man,
and then
great.
John, who did the art on the inside, John Samariva, who I'm buds with now too. He did all of our inside stuff, and he's pretty awesome too.
And I'm glad you pronounced his name because I was going to butcher it. So yes, we got Dan Moore on covers, John Samariva, Samari.
I've never said it out loud before. I think that's the first time. It's fine. John will forgive us. He's Australian, so I'm sure worse things have been said.
Yes, he did the interiors. Matt Herms was the colorist, and Marshall Dillon on the letters. This book that we're talking about today, Multiverses, I got to say, I try to put my Bryan Q. Miller love aside. When I read something Bryan Q. Miller, when I know he's working on it, I try to say, okay, I need to be impartial. I know he's put me in a comic before. He's a great guy. But when I was reading Multiverses, I was like, this is Vector catnip. This is perfect for me because I'm a huge video game player. I grew up on Looney Tunes, obviously my comic book connection, So all of these things together, it was like, this is a perfect mixture of everything that I love and everything that I like. So I'm actually curious, when you got the call that you were going to be doing this, were you drawn to it because you like video games, because you like Looney Tunes, Warner Brothers? How did you get the interest to do this book?
I think it was a mix of those things. Katie Kubert, who's my editor on this, who I've known for a very long time because she way back in the day was with Mike Siglane editing my Batgirl. And I've done a few little things for her that kind of flamed out. So like we were like, what are we going to do that's actually going to stick? And she was like, yeah, we've got 2 video game projects coming up. I can't say what they are yet, but would you be interested in doing a comic for one? And so, I go to IGN and I start looking around like, okay, well, what's coming up? And so it's like Suicide Squad killed the Justice League and Multiverses. And so I'm like, ooh, if it's Suicide Squad, that's cool. I've never written them before. And she's like, and it's the one with Bugs Bunny. And so like, you know what? That's okay. So I get to write Superman and Batman in it. But like the appeal of it, I think, like it's just a bunch of people I've never gotten to write. Like that's something where it's like, I'm not going to have another opportunity to do. I'm looking at the cover of the trade right here, like Steven and Garnet. Like it's just not. And I know according to some people online, I got some Garnet stuff right because she never asked questions, I guess. And I had her ask the question, and I was like, I've watched a lot of Steven Universe. I never picked up on that, but that's fine. But it was a chance to just kind of have fun with all of that stuff, and also just kind of mix in a little bit of, and there's less of it, which we can talk about at some point. But so a little bit of like metatextual Grant Morrison-y stuff in there, just where it's like, oh, and this is a game within a universe, but is that within someone else's context? So a lot of that had to be kind of trimmed out, but I think I even name dropped him at one point in it because Rick was in it much more at one point. And so there was a very nihilistic monologue Rick had at one point where he just gets frustrated and says like, who knows if we're all even just like a figment of Grant Morrison's like imagination or whatever.
That would be amazing.
It was great. I really was excited about it. We had to cut it, but it was a blast. It was a blast getting to write for everybody. And then it just like logistically, like it just, we couldn't fit everybody in it. Like there were so many more characters. Like I've got the Adventure Time guys on the cover too, and like Tom and Jerry and stuff. And there's just not like I got to write Scooby and Shaggy, which really for me is fine
They
by
were
me.
great.
Yeah.
Yes, that was like one of my favorite standout moments was all the Scooby and Shaggy, like the Scooby talk, like the row, like all of that stuff was great. And then like I didn't know that I needed Bryan Q. Miller writing Bugs Bunny, but it fit perfectly. You got his voice down to a
I'm
T.
very glad to hear that because that's the one I was most nervous about. But then like I
Wow.
got to go back and like, well, it's interesting. I got to go back and watch a bunch of Looney Tunes stuff that I haven't watched in God, but like old Looney Tunes stuff, like
Yeah.
edgy old Looney Tunes stuff, and which I hadn't done in a long time, which was really fun. And then I'm like, Jesus Christ, I was watching this when I was 4. Like it's like, okay, all right, like really like over and over watching it when I was 4. But like going back to him, and then it's a weird thing which I didn't realize until I got to the issue where I got to write Harley and Ivy, which is also like a big super privilege honor. But how similar Bugs and Harley are, like because they really like just in the way they talk and how they talk, and like there's a little bit more of Deadpool to Bugs, I think, than there is to Harley, but it depends on the comic that you're reading. But I was just like, oh yeah, and I need to make a conscious effort to make sure that I don't have them both talking in the same panel because then they're just going to sound identical. Yeah.
Yeah, that is great. I didn't even put that together, but that is like 100%. There is that similarity between the two. And again, you knocked it out of the park on both characters. Like that was another one with the Harley and Ivy stuff. I was like, recently the Harley Quinn show has been influenced. I haven't been keeping up on a lot of the Harley comics, but the Harley Quinn show on Max is like when I think in my mind her talking, and that's what the one that I'm hearing now. And it's so interesting to see her character arc and evolution over from Batman the Animated Series up to Harley Quinn. Like she's been so flexible and malleable and very kind of similar to Batman. Like she works in all these different contexts, but then DC has also allowed her to grow, to get away from Joker and become her own character in person. So all of that stuff, man, you did a fantastic job of fitting her in. And actually, that's a question that I had is, what was that process like of, okay, I have to fit in Steven Universe, I have to fit in Rick and Morty. Like, what was that process for you? Did you just have a spreadsheet of, okay, here's all the people I need and here's all the story beats that I have?
It was even more ridiculous than that at first. Because there were spreadsheets because we started, because this comic was done, I think, before the game went offline the first time when they decided it was when they decided it was just a beta, but like no one was told it was a beta, but apparently it was a beta. And so we went to great editorial lengths to try and line up who debuted at which point in which issue with when that character was going to drop in the game. So like when Joker pops up right in the run, that was going to be timed out so that issue came out on Tuesday, and then Wednesday he drops in the game, and there was going to be like a promotional code in the comic that takes you to the game with maybe some skins or something, and it just the delay after delay after delay, and so that's why we're like, yeah, look at what will be in the game, right? It says so. She's on a spreadsheet. Here we are, and she's not in the game yet. But she's got to be, right? Scooby's got to be in the game, right? Because he's in the comic. Well, at the time, yeah, Scooby was going to be in the game. So it was a lot of that stuff, just back and forth. And the only one that really affected anything was Rick Sanchez, because we had much more Rick, and then there were some usage issues. Because he like print wise, right? Like he's got the Rick and Morty D&D comics with Oni and stuff. Like, so it's video game rights versus comic rights, and then getting into the nitty gritty, which was interesting because I haven't had to do that before, of like with the lawyers of like, well, he can be on one page and he can't speak. So then I'm like, well, then how am I supposed to? So that's why we do the security monitors, because it's on panels, but it's on one page and it's in one image, but I give you a 9-panel story. That tells a little bit of what I wanted Rick to do, but that was kind of really just the trickiest part, because everything else really just kind of like a lot of his stuff we were able to at least like slide in through Brainiac, who I was able to put in being like possessed with Rick's ghost or whatever with Rick information. So that was kind of our way of trying to bandage up the patient when that had to change. Cause I want to say I was almost done with all 6 when it was like, by the way, no Rick. So then I was like, oh, what? Who? What? Hey? And so we had to go back. So 1, 2, and 3 weren't affected, but 3 was definitely affected. 1 and 2 weren't affected. 3 was affected the least, but 4, 5, and 6 was a much heavier Rick presence that had to get trimmed down.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. It's so interesting to hear the behind the scenes because as you're reading it, you're not aware of that. And like you said, if you're going to be reading it in trade, you're not going to get the same, like as it was being released, like, oh, okay, at this time, this is happening in the real world, and that synergy and that back and forth, it kind of feels similar to how the MCU is trying to be like, okay, well, this is happening in the movie, and then this show is happening at the same time on Disney Plus, and then that just all kind of went away.
That's a logistical nightmare. That's why, I mean, I think, right, because of delays and stuff in this last season of What If, there's like a bunch of Ironheart. There's a bunch of Riri Williams.
Yeah.
And that show has not aired yet, but I assume that's why that was there, because it was supposed to capitalize on, well, we've got her in the live action here, we'll have her in the animation here, by Ironheart Fever, and we haven't gotten the bug yet. So
yeah, man, it's and COVID, like you said, the writer's strike, like a lot of things push things back, and you never know what's going to happen in the real world. So it's like the best laid plans are always, one day we'll get that perfect synergy. But I think the Multiverses game, like when it first came out, I'm not a huge like Super Smash Brothers fan, that style of game, but I like
terrible at them.
Yeah, I'm
like,
the worst.
Why is there a percentage? What does the percentage mean? And I don't.
Yes, I'm getting knocked off the side of the map. But the thing that I like about those games is, I was thinking about it as I was reading this, the same thing I like about what drew me to Fortnite was the licensed characters and kind of, I can be Batman, I can be Venom, I can be Spider-Man. Like there's so many, and I have so many interests. One day I'm RoboCop and one day I'm Rick Sanchez. So being able to play in that, that bringing that to life is so fun. And I think that's what this comic feels like. There's so many different, like I said, I grew up on Looney Tunes. And actually it was interesting because right before I knew that you were going to come on for this, I had been playing Looney Tunes for my son. And he's, like you said, you were watching it when you were 4. He's about 3 right now. He's about to turn 4. And obviously he doesn't understand a lot of the context, but yeah, I'm kind of like, hey, maybe he shouldn't be watching those parts. But for the most part, like he's liking the characters and the silly things that are happening, Roadrunner and Coyote. So he's in the making of a Looney Tunes fan. But I liked that when I was growing up, more than Disney, more than anything else, I was like a Looney Tunes guy.
Yeah,
so this brought it out. Like, oh man, I remembered, because I think I'm like you. I hadn't watched it in a while, and especially like you said, like the older ones.
There's way more shotgun stuff than I remembered. Like a lot more shotgun stuff.
Yes.
Like uncomfortably, like shotguns up noses and stuff, and you're like,
yeah. It's like in 2025, and also we're parents now. Like it's so different experiencing it. So that part is funny, but it's still, the Looney Tunes have been around for so long, and I think that was like their appeal in Space Jam of, oh yeah, there's these wacky characters, and there's Michael Jordan, and there's LeBron James, or whatever it is. They've had this lasting appeal on pop culture, and this comic, I thought that you really did a great job of kind of infusing all of them in there. What are your thoughts on the multiverse in general? Like, do you like multiverse stories as a consumer?
I mean, I think it depends. I think it can be a very big rut that doesn't necessarily always hold up everything you need it to. Because once you start to pull the thread and really sit down and think about it, it's such a big, unwieldy concept.
Right. Yep.
That then suddenly, and which is part of which I guess another part of that Rick Sanchez monologue I had to cut with the nihilism is like, well, nothing matters because everything exists. Every configuration of everything, like
Right.
It's everywhere. So nothing is
Right.
special. And I think there is a danger to that, but then like used sparingly, like I think in the kind of the 2-part finale of Lower Decks that wrapped it all up, it was used to great effect. But I did like when the multiverses idea started popping up this season, I was like, oh God, okay, all right. And I wrote multiverse stuff, but it at least wasn't getting into, which I think is where it can get a little bit confusing, where it's like, okay, it's Batman, there's a cowboy Batman, or like the Deadpool thing. We're in Deadpool
Right.
3,
Yep.
there's
Yep.
all the different Deadpools, and so it's like, well, then which one am I? They're all essentially Deadpool, then why are all of those Deadpools aligning against this Deadpool if they're basically the same Deadpool? And then it gets, I think, murky. But with this one, we at least
Yes.
used it to bring different people together versus variations. So I think that more than anything, we just kind of played around with their Earth and their worlds, but not like, oh, what made their world different from this world is that this happened or this happened. It's just like, nope, there's a world where that happens, and they're now stuck in the
Yes.
DC universe versus everywhere else.
Man, yeah, that's so interesting to think about all of those different variations that you could possibly include. Were there any characters that you, I guess, besides Rick, was there any that you wanted to include more of that maybe that for time reasons or there wasn't for legal reasons? Was there a character that you came up with and said, "Oh, I'd love to do this character," and then they're like, "No."
Thanks. I mean, because the list was already, because it was like 12 characters to start with. I think like it was much more, can I step outside the box, and like if I'm gonna have Harley, I really feel like I need to have Ivy, like to ground her a little bit. And I know Ivy's not in the
Right.
game, but it doesn't preclude her never being in the game. But can I do that? And no one said no to that. Or like, of course, if I was gonna do a JLA thing, I was gonna have John Stewart, Green Lantern, and Shayera Hawkgirl like in the sky over Metropolis doing their stuff, because that's my JLA is that Justice League. And they were like, yeah, that's fine. Like I could have Flash in it and like have him get grossed out with Scooby and Shaggy. Like it was much more.
That's great.
What can I play with that doesn't make anybody who's working on the game angry? Just to make things easier. And it turned out that was DC characters, because we basically pushed it all through onto like this DC Earth. So again, that gave us, I think, more license to do it.
Yeah, man. And I gotta say, John's art fit perfectly. Like I said,
Oh, it was fantastic.
originally it was like I came for the Dan Mora covers, but once I got into it, it was it was a perfect pairing. Like his art style fits these characters so well, and I don't like to use the like cartoony as a pejorative, like that, like it's in a bad way. A cartoony to me is just a different style, and there's a time and place for everything. His style fits perfect with this story and the way that you're telling it and all of these characters, especially with the Looney Tunes. And I became a fan as each issue
He's great.
went on. Yeah, I just became a bigger and bigger fan.
He's on my list of people I bother about availability now. Where I'm like, hey, can we do something? He's like, no, I'm tied up with Tom Taylor's got me doing something else, and so I'm busy with all this other successful stuff. So, I'm all right. Well, I'm gonna keep paying you once a year. You're gonna get me saying, hey, buddy.
Man.
But no, he was well, and I think what's great about, like you say, like the cartoony, which I see is more like a kinetic style, like it might be another way to look at it.
Right.
But he was very good about like doing an aggregate of style across all the different things, because you had what the DC and the game designs gave us a little bit of help with that, because a lot of them are based on their game designs. But like I'm looking at the cover to have Steven Universe and Bugs Bunny and Batman all together, I think what really helped was they still had elements of their individual styles, but the way John drew them, they all made sense together, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, because that's like you were saying, the toy box analogy is perfect, because I remember when I was a kid, I had a shelf, and kind of similar to the one you have right behind you. Like it was like, okay, this Ninja Turtle is this big, and then this He-Man figure is this big, and they were all different shapes and sizes. But then in my mind, they're all fitting together and fighting each other. So like that style, like you said, he worked the differences in there, but it's still his uniform look and cohesiveness. That was great.
You do this, and that reminds me that there was the other one that I was nervous to use just because I hold it in such high regard, but didn't get to use, so I was kind of relieved, was Iron Giant, because there was a moment there was a moment where there was, I believe there was debate, is Iron Giant going to be playable, or is it going to just be like a fight level, like where the arena is like Iron Giant's head and shoulders, and like how do you scale it and make it all work?
Right.
And I'm honestly, just of all the things, like I'm kind of glad I didn't have to work that in, because it's just, I hold that in such high regard. I don't want to do wrong by the Iron Giant. So
Yes, man. Well, to me, I know you as 50% Batman because of Batgirl, 50% Superman because of Smallville. Writing both of those, the big guns in here, and Wonder Woman is here as well. So like you've got the Trinity in here. Was there anyone that you liked writing more than others, or was there anything that you kind of found unexpected by the end of it? You're like, oh, I like writing Harley more than I thought I would.
I really liked writing Harley. I like writing Harley a whole lot. That was a treat. I really liked writing Harley. Really like, because I think sometimes, and it depends on who's like head of editorial at different times, like with Batman. Sometimes Batman's allowed to take people's shit. Sometimes he's not.
Yes.
And so like being able to just like to have like Bugs Bunny like get under his skin a little bit. Side note, I guess some people thought it was sexy. Like with Bugs Bunny, it was a whole thing. Like I was getting DMs, I was getting things on like Twitter where it's like, I never thought Bugs Bunny was hot before, but it's like, and I kept like forwarding them to John. I'm like, what have we done? Was this a mistake? But there was a little component of that was unexpected. So, but I'm glad that I didn't yuck someone's yum with that. I yummed their yum with that. But
that was great.
But being able to do that and like have the running joke about him being so grimdark and so secretive that he has like the second Batcave.
Yeah.
And Joker even knows he has the second Batcave, and he's disappointed because he would never take me to the first Batcave. So I know this is the second Batcave.
Yes.
So just leaning, or like a little bit of the caricature of just like Clark not knowing like what the group chat was and how that worked. But then Lois, of course, has it with everyone else because she's Lois. I thought that was fun because it was also a way to like humanize them a little bit. And sometimes they can, or like even like Diana getting upset because no one asks her how her day goes ever. And she's just like, I got voted head of my HOA in my building, guys. It's a pretty significant thing. I really have, like, you guys are like wagging your dicks back and forth. Like this stuff, like no one said, Diana, how's it going? Yeah. Which also feels a little metatextual just with the comic community as well, because everyone else has a much larger outside of their cape life, I think, than she typically.
Yes, man, all of that like I said, this was for the perfect comic for me, and I had such a great time reading it. And like I said, the art fit so well that it was that one panel where it's like every version of Bugs Bunny, like it was like, all right, here's my superpower.
It was awesome. It was towards the end. Yeah. When he unleashes, and it's like opera bugs.
Yes. And
just to pimp it, there's the trade.
Yeah.
Which I thought was coming out in March, but I honestly have no idea now when it's coming out.
Whenever
early. So
yes,
as we are
whenever
not
it comes
March,
out.
Yeah. Where's that bug flash?
Yes.
I thought it was. Yeah. There it is. It's in like the last issue where it's like the big.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Where it's the bugs, splash right there. Yeah.
That was like in my mind. I went through it. Just like I said, I have such a rich history with Looney Tunes, with Bugs Bunny, one of my favorite characters of all time. It was like a montage in my head of like, oh yeah, I remember this. I remember this.
He hits the guy in the head with the thing.
Yeah.
Was Conductor Bugs in there? Wait, I gotta look. I gotta look because
remember.
If Conductor Buzz wasn't, I need to be angry with myself about not calling that out for John. Conductor Bugs is not, but there's Valkyrie. There's Valkyrie Bugs, which I think is part and parcel.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you and I, we're in the same era. Like we grew up with a lot of the same influences and things. So this was a sweet spot for me. So like I said, I really enjoyed this from start to finish. I'm curious, like I said at the start, you are one of the best dads that I know, just from the outside in. I'm not in your house seeing this, but with your children, I guess there's a multiple with this one because there's a video game aspect of it. are they into the things that are in this comic, whether it be video games, Looney Tunes, the DC characters?
Some of it, like my older guy, very much more had a better sense of what everyone was from, and my younger guy every now and then was just like, who is, like, he didn't know Tom and Jerry, right? And then it's like, well, why did they? It just, it wasn't, because again, we don't show him a lot of murder adjacent cartoons,
Yeah.
so with like mammy stuff or whatever in the older ones, like we
Yeah.
don't do
Right.
it for
Yep.
very good reason. But yeah, he recognized the Adventure Time guys a little bit. He didn't recognize Tom and Jerry. He got a kick out of Scooby and Shaggy. But he can read now. So he also he'll just sit down with the books and just go through them. So rest assured, we are going to go see the shit out of Dogman on the Thursday. We are in it with Dogman now, buddy. Like if there could have been Dogman in here, I feel like he'd build a statue of me if I could have put Dogman in there.
Oh, man.
But
Hey,
we are
yes.
in it with Dogman. But yeah, they both got a kick out of it. It's again it's always rewarding. Like I'd taken my oldest to, and I don't get to the shop too often anymore, but we went in just to go see what was up. Because I wanted to check out the Absolute stuff. I wanted to read
Yes.
the Absolute comic. And
Yes.
so just like on the spinner rack or whatever, where they had like the kid stuff, was like my first issue of Multiverses. So he was like, "Oh my God, Dad, it's your comic." And I'm like, "I've had comics on shelves before. It's not that big a deal." But then I'm like, "Well, my kid thought it was that big a deal, so maybe it matters." But they catch up with it where they need to, where they need, like the little one is also very inquisitive. So he will ask it questions if he has them about, like, why is this happening? What is this? What is Steven doing? But yeah.
Man, dang. Well, I cannot express to you. I don't think I've said it enough. I enjoyed this comic. I enjoyed Multiverses, and it's just another Bryan Q. Miller classic. This is just another. It's another feather in your cap. This is just in the oeuvre of Bryan Q. Miller.
Thank you,
This
sir.
is. I want to put this. This might be my new favorite. I know Batgirl has a special place because I'm
Them's
in it.
fighting words, son. Watch out. Watch out.
I really enjoyed this. So I highly recommend anyone who is listening to this or watching this, please go check out Multiverses. You will have a great time, especially if you're in kind of the same age bracket as me, the wheelhouse of Looney Tunes, DC, video games, all of these things just come together and really, like I said, they make it something special. The sum of its parts is what really elevates this work. So I have just take my hat off to everyone involved, the entire creative team. And Bryan Q. Miller, you, sir, are a joy and a delight.
You're a joy. You stop it. With your big sticker of your wife on the wall. You stop it.
Cannot thank you enough for joining me here on YouTube. And at any time you want, I say this to you all the time, but anytime you want to talk to me about Lower Decks, Star Trek, anything that is making Q happy, please come back and talk to me about it.
All right, we will do that.
Thank you, sir. Like I said, everyone go out, get Multiverses, buy everything Bryan Q. Miller has ever written, everything that he's ever done. Go support this man. He is a shining light. And also follow him on Blue Sky.
Blue Sky.
He is a great, like I said, your comedy, your humor, the way that you inject everything is just, it is great. And also, he's got merch. He's got shirts. He's got a fantastic Stephanie Brown Batgirl shirt. I love it. I was going to be wearing it. I was going to try to surprise you for this, but it's actually in the mail right now. It hasn't arrived yet, but I'm going to leave a link down below to your great merch shop because, like I said, it's funny. All of the stuff, the humor is in everything that Q does.
I get my stupid little ideas, and then I got to barf them out somewhere. So
definitely check that out. And thank you, listener, viewer, watcher, everyone. Please come back again and join us. We have some great stuff coming up in the future. This year is the year of Superman. So we got a lot of super content coming. So leave a comment, like, notified, hit the subscribe bell, do all that stuff. But come back for another episode. Bryan Q. Miller is the best, and you are the best for watching.